So this is my house, and my house is divided into 2 districts. Everything on this side is District 2, and everything on this side is District 1. So the bedrooms on this side of the house are all in District 2 technically, and the kitchen, garage, living room, all that District 1 technically. So we vote, it turns out, in District 1 with the rest of the precinct over here, which is part of the city of Cincinnati, but our next door neighbors and all the neighbors over that way are District 2.
Ohio is home to some of the most gerrymandered districts in the country, and that's true not only for our state legislative maps, but also our congressional districts. Our maps in 2011 were drawn behind closed doors in a private hotel room that the Republicans nicknamed the bunker. So even though Ohio is really a purple state that votes for Democrats and Republicans across the last decade in almost a 50-50 split, the Republicans occupy 75% of our congressional seats and have supermajorities in both of our legislative chambers. In 2015 and in 2018, Ohioans went to the ballot and flatly rejected how everything happened with the redistricting process in 2011. We wanted fair maps that actually represent or reflect how we vote. Unfortunately, that's not how the process has actually gone. From top to bottom, the process has really failed to live up to the promise of those reform measures and the requirements of our Ohio Constitution. The ultimate maps that the Republican commissioners, who control 5 of the 7 votes on the body that actually draws our state legislative maps, are heavily partisan gerrymandered to favor Republicans. So even though across the last decade, Republicans have only won 54% of our vote, they will occupy 70% of our legislative seats under these new maps. There's sort of 2 major ways that you can gerrymander. One is cracking communities apart, and the other is packing them together. So cracking happens when you carve apart pieces of a neighborhood, and rather than putting them together into a district with other more similar communities, you instead are separating them and drowning them out into a district where maybe they don't have a lot in common with all of the other people who are in a district. The other way that you gerrymander is by packing your opponents or certain communities into as few districts as possible. So you're cramming them into districts that are very heavily Democratic or Republican, or have very high levels of communities of color packed into one district. Cuyahoga County is a huge hub of Democratic voters in Ohio. It also has a considerably high Black population. And so what we see in certain districts is either packing them together in the city centers or drawing in more rural counties into suburbs of just outside of Cleveland. You're instead drowning those voters out into a district that you're hoping is going to swing Republican. So what we're seeing in some of the districts like House District 26 and 27 in Hamilton County is similar to what we're seeing in other districts, especially in our major metropolitan areas across the state. Biden actually won Hamilton County by just over 50%, and yet only 1 of the 3 Senate districts leans Democratic. So that obviously is not representative of who lives here or how they vote. So we're packing Democrats into as few districts as possible and then cracking sort of those fringe or suburban areas away from those Democratic hubs to maximize Republican representation in an area that's maybe not reflective given how the area actually votes.
Gerrymandering cracks apart and dilutes communities of color, denying representation and exacerbating environmental injustices. Low-income communities of color are most likely to be the frontline communities to pollution and the impacts of climate change. And these communities have the least political representation. Here in Cleveland, we're looking at the lead paint indicator. And we can see how districts 21 and 19 split these communities experiencing these hazards apart, and again, drags them into districts with suburbs and rural areas to the east. For example, just look at Bedford Heights in District 22, how it takes these communities that are experiencing environmental injustice, like this lead paint indicator, like this cancer risk, and it drags it into the communities that have highly different experiences.